Hi, I'm Mrs Schulten, and I'll be your child's art teacher this semester. I've been teaching at St. Charles North since 2007, focusing primarily on digital art, photography, and AP studio art. A bit about myself and my background. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art Education from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I also have a master's degree in instructional technology from Northern Illinois University. In my free time, I am a mom of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I teach part time in the mornings, periods 1 through 3. I also love to garden and landscape and make my own art. Now let's take a look at the course expectations. Welcome to AP Studio Art, Photography, and Digital Art with Mrs. Schulten. First, we'll start off with some expectations and coursework. Students will be accessing assignments and submitting their work through Google Classroom. Students are accessing Lightroom, Photoshop, and Illustrator in class on the iMacs. At home, they can either purchase the Adobe software for a personal computer or log into the Citrix servers that we have through school using programs or using the programs through a remote connection with their Chromebooks or personal computer. This is how we accessed the software last year during remote learning, and so we've continued to have access to this service. It really comes down to the cost if students prefer to have the software directly on their own personal computer. A good, strong internet connection is necessary to be able to use the Citrix servers and run the software well. And so it comes down to personal preference and the cost and what one is able to afford or wanting to experiment with. From there, students should be prepared to work in class every day, doing any necessary photo shoots outside of class if they're a photographer, unless the studio is needed. So they need to plan accordingly and spend time over the weekends or throughout the week so that they can come to class and not have spent days sitting in class without something to work on when they have a looming deadline. Generally, students should be prepared to spend an hour outside of class for every hour spent inside of class on their artwork to have a successful and passing portfolio. As I tell students, this does not mean that every single night they're spending 45 minutes on their artwork or more. What it does look like is that perhaps students pool together some of that time. Maybe they have 3 hours on a Saturday morning they can carve out, and then a few other hours throughout the week, for example. They have to have an honest conversation with themselves and their families about the time commitment, their other outside time commitments, such as extracurriculars and jobs and volunteer positions, and try to figure out in their own calendar how they can carve in time for AP Studio Art. They will not be successful if they cannot carve out time. It's a vital necessity for the class to be able to put in that kind of work because it is a college level class. Students will be judged. Their exam is their artwork. And so their exam, in essence, is all year round, and they have to put in the time now and ongoing throughout the year to really pull together the work that's necessary to get a strong passing portfolio and earn that college credit. So what are the components of the AP Studio Art portfolio? There's two major sections. The first is called Sustained Investigation, and the second is called Selected Works. We'll start off with the Sustained Investigation. This is 15 images that they will submit on an online portfolio system through the College Board. The Sustained Investigation shows practice, experimentation, and revision. It also is about the materials, processes, and ideas. And it's a synthesis of the materials, processes, and ideas. So not only is sustained investigation of it, but also that synthesis where those three things work together. And it's also focusing on the strength of the 2D design skills. All of our students in this section will be a 2D design portfolio, not 3D or drawing. They will also have to do some writing that goes alongside their artwork. The writing is to identify the questions that guided your sustained investigation. So what was the inquiry that's driving their artwork throughout the semester, throughout the year? Next, they need to describe how your sustained investigation shows evidence of practice, experimentation, and revision guided by your questions. And half of the rubric actually focuses on the writing and the visual. And so they cannot do well without really focusing on their writing. I'm going to jump back for just a moment and re-highlight something. The 15 images that will be submitted, this isn't necessarily 15 different artworks. This is 15 images, and some of those are going to be finalized artworks, say 10 to 12 of them, and the rest will be documentation of process, revision, material explorations, and so I tend to call those process slides. And so the students will show throughout the way their research, their sketches, their maybe contact proof sheets, their before and afters of their artworks or revisions along the way, and compile all that together onto maybe one slide per artwork as they go, and really show the judges their process. And so that's an important component as well. So ultimately 15 images, 10 to 12 actual artworks is a good ballpark figure, and then several slides or process images showing that documentation of their process. Let's move on and take a look at selected works. Selected works is going to be 5 images submitted that demonstrate visual evidence of advanced 2D skills, visual evidence of synthesis of materials, processes, and ideas, and visual evidence of the written idea in all 5 works of art. And so there's also a short writing component in this one. Well, they will have to list in 100 characters or less to tell the judges about their materials, their processes, and then the ideas. So there's 3 little spots they can fill in 100 characters for each of those. So it's very short, sweet, succinct writing that doesn't necessarily have to follow proper grammar conventions, but we do a whole workshop on that later. We're squeezing every drop we can out of those 100 characters. And then again, the writing component there on the bottom. These selected works are more than likely going to come from the sustained investigation. And so we can double dip and take their best 5 pieces from the year that are likely from their sustained investigation and submit those also as the selected works. But they might not be. It might be something they've done on their own. It might be something from a previous year or semester, some work, say, from like Photo 3 or Advanced Studio. It might also be something from their summer assignment or from our first exploration assignments this semester before we dig into their sustained investigation. So we'll be taking a look at that towards the end of the school year as we're working to finalize our portfolios. So here's a portfolio from a past student, and you can see these are screenshots from the PDF from her submission. And you can see some examples here of the finished artwork and then a process slide that has the student's compositional sketches, her character development and research, her color studies, and the student was a digital painter. You can see her stages along the way from sketch to developing the character, a work in progress, and then to her final revisions here. Listed materials, processes, and her size or dimensions. Similar on the right-hand side, we have another piece and a process slide. Continuing on, a similar theme on these slides here. And so the written component that they're being judged on is not only this listing of materials and processes, but also as we reach the end here, you'll see an actual paragraph of writing. So here's the 15 images, again, a combination of final artworks and documentation of process. This is the student's selected works then. The selected works here, you can see a few of them are from her sustained investigation. A couple of them are not, though. They are pieces that she did for other assignments earlier in the year before the sustained investigation started. Okay, here is another student example. The last was a digital painter. This is a photography student. And so her work was a series of diptychs of 2 photos composited together side by side. You can see again her height, width, materials, and processes. Some documentation of her process as a photographer. It looks a little bit different than a digital painter, but we see some contact proof sheets, some editing, some revisions, and even a photograph of her up on her ladder above the pond to show her in action as the photographer. A few more images here from her portfolio. And so there is an exploration of her ideas throughout the way that she handles light and portraiture, how she is merging the human figure with that natural element that she's trying to portray. Some more of her editing and process slides. And then here's the example of the written evidence in the student's response on the right-hand side. Identifying the inquiry that guided her sustained investigation was how do people personify natural elements through landscape and portrait diptychs. I captured the overall element being portrayed with landscape shots and how the model was personifying this element in the portrait shot. And then she continues on to identify some specific pieces and how she shows evidence of practice, experimentation, and revision. And then her selected works. You can see she chose all 5 from her sustained investigation. And so that is totally okay. The previous student had a mixture of some from her essay and some from previous assignments. And in this case, this student chose all 5 from her selected works. If you have any questions about AP Studio Art, feel free to please reach out to me via email, carissa.schulten@d303.org. I look forward to partnering with you to help your child have a very successful AP Studio Art portfolio and a year of growth and artistic discovery. Thank you and take care.